One of the most well-known and widely discussed cryptids of all time are the mysterious, hairy, ape-like giants of North America, which are variously called the Bigfoot, Sasquatch, skunk ape, grassman, and other regional names. Seen all over the continent, they may differ in appearance or behavior, but one thing that is usually consistent is that for all of their size and strength, they seem to be mostly peaceful and benevolent denizens of the forest, much more likely to run away or hide than to confront you. Yet, there have been many accounts from at least the 19th century all the way up to the present of a different side to these creatures, that of a fierce, ferocious beast, fully willing and able to attack or even kill if it has to. Although not as common as reports of the more benign or gentle Bigfoot, these accounts, or the violent and aggressive Bigfoot attacks, are rather scary and very shocking. They show that there is perhaps more to these enigmatic creatures than meets the eye. Perhaps the most widely known and publicized case of an attack on humans from an alleged Bigfoot occurred in the summer of 1924, when 5 prospectors by the names of Marion Smith, his son Roy Smith, Fred Beck, Gabe Lefevre, and John Peterson were out in the wilds of Mount St. Helens in Skamania County, Washington. The group was out in the remote wilderness working on a claim in the area of a branch of the Lewis River, about 8 miles from Spirit Lake, when they came across their first of many oddities to come. There, embedded into the earth, was a series of footprints reported as looking very human-like, but much more massive. They sat around 14 inches in length, with unusually stubby toes. Not long after this, the men began to see some strange creature through the trees during their trek, with a hulking 7-foot-tall, gorilla-like figure seen on at least 4 different occasions, which was described as being covered in long black fur and sporting 2 4-inch long ears that stuck straight up, which is an odd detail to say the least. At one point, one of the spooked prospectors, Marion Smith, fired at it to send it lumbering off, but far from cowering, it seemed to only make the creature even bolder. On the morning of July 10th, Beck reportedly sighted the creature standing some distance away near the edge of a canyon and decided to try to take another shot at it. Now, apparently he managed to score a direct hit, and the bizarre figure apparently staggered and fell right over the ledge of the canyon, plummeting at least 400 feet down, presumably to its death. It was perhaps this incident that would be the catalyst for what came next. Later that evening, the men were relaxing at their camp in the cabin they had built when they were startled by a sudden, urgent pounding on the roof that seemed to shake the whole structure. Prospectors were immediately on high alert, grabbed their rifles, still wondering just what was going on. In addition to this pounding and thudding, the cabin began to be pelted by large rocks, some of which broke off pieces of the building or came careening straight through the windows and roof, at least one of which struck Beck to reportedly knock him completely unconscious. According to the news stories at the time, there were dozens of creatures prowling about outside the cabin, and Beck would later claim that the men had fired wildly out into the night in all directions, and even up through the roof in a panicked, desperate attempt to drive the menacing creatures off. According to him, the fight lasted all night as they cowered in the cabin, shooting at the monstrous, hairy intruders that were assaulting them from out in the night. These came to be called the Mountain Devils, and it was not until the coming of morning that they were finally able to escape, leaving their cabin, equipment, and potentially very valuable claim behind. As soon as the story was out, the area came to be known as Ape Canyon, still able to be Googled to this day. The natives of this area suggested that the men had come across a tribe of 7 to 8 foot tall, hairy wild men with supernatural powers. Now these men they call the Cytokinestormnarrations. According to the tribal sources, members of the lost tribe were typically shy and hardly ever seen, but would exact great vengeance on anyone who killed one of their own. Not only is this one of the earliest reports of Bigfoot violence, but it is the report that really got people interested in the phenomenon of massive, hairy ape men in North America. And the report really got people's imaginations going at the time. The story of the Ape Canyon Bigfoot attack has become a major part of Bigfoot lore ever since, but as dramatic and as exciting as it is, there are some inconsistencies to be found in later reports and in the retelling. For instance, in the original report of the attack, it was stated that the creature that had been shot off of the cliff had been killed the day before the attack, yet Beck would, in later years, insist that it had been killed the morning after the attack. The size of the footprints they had found also went up from an already impressive 12 inches, all the way up to a staggering 19 inches in length. And Beck would claim that the original creature that had been shot had been hit in the head 3 times by Smith, yet been totally unfazed. The attack itself later also underwent an evolution from a brief shootout to a prolonged all-night siege and attack, with the creatures trying to smash their way in and even reaching through the holes in the walls to try to grab the terrified men within. But everyone I've ever met generally exaggerates a story, and the more times they tell it, the greater the exaggerations get. So this doesn't deter my personal belief in the validity of this story. In short, the story has gotten more and more exciting and more action-packed over the years. And while this may just be down to Beck's ailing memory in later years, or simple exaggeration, it still smacks of trying to sensationalize and spice up the story, and makes any truth that much harder to glean from it. Interestingly enough, one of the people who interviewed Beck about his experience in later years was none other than Roger Patterson, the man who managed to film the most famous pieces of Bigfoot footage of all time. This was back in the October of 1967, and who published the interview in a 1966 book called Do Abominable Snowmen of America Really Exist? Indeed, it is said that the whole over-the-top account given by Beck was one of the reasons Patterson and his partner Bob Gimlin had developed so much interest in the creatures to begin with, and why they had ended up out there on Bluff Creek looking for Bigfoot. The Ape Canyon story will likely remain cloaked in mystery, and we will probably never know just how much of what was reported actually happened and how much is fiction. My belief is that it did happen, but it probably has been greatly exaggerated. There is unfortunately not much evidence to go on other than Beck's account, and even the location of the attack, which was the cabin, was supposedly destroyed in a fire in 1968. According to Beck, and by other accounts, it was wiped out in the 1980 eruption of Mount St. Helens. The exact location of the mysterious cabin continues to be searched for to this day, with some even claiming to have found it. The body of the creature that Beck allegedly shot was sent sprawling to its doom on the rocks below, but was also never recovered, if it ever existed at all. Due to this lack of evidence and any way to corroborate the events depicted, it seems we are left to merely speculate and discuss the far-out tale of Ape Canyon. Unfortunately, this is the way of most stories. Bigfoot is very elusive. It's almost impossible to gain real physical evidence. So all we have are the first-hand accounts of many, many people. Here are some of those accounts. In May of 1950, a mountaineer and skier by the name of Jim Carter suddenly and very mysteriously disappeared inside of Ape Canyon while out on a climbing expedition with 20 other people. It was a warm, clear day. A subsequent search would turn up footprints that seemed to suggest that the missing man had been frantically running, as if being chased, even careening down step embankments and hurtling recklessly over crevices. One searcher, mountaineer, and member of the Seattle Mountain Search and Rescue Unit, named Bob Lee, said that there was the constant sense of being watched from the woods during the entire search. He would say this of the expedition: "It was the most eerie experience I've ever had. There was something strange on the high slopes of the mountain. I could just feel the hair on my neck standing up. It was eerie. I was unarmed except for my ice axe, and believe me, I never let go of that." Now, Carter's complete disappearance is an unsolved mystery to this day. Dr. Otto Trott, Lee Stark, and I finally came to the conclusion that the mountain devils got him. There was no other logical choice to make. No other end could have come to this man without leaving a body. After a 2-week search by nearly 100 rescuers and myself, No signs of Carter other than that strange evidence of his mad dash down the mountain was ever found. Lee then would go on to say that he was dead serious when he said that the mountain devils got him, and claimed that there had been 25 reports of being harassed and or attacked by ape-like creatures at Mount St. Helens over a period of 20 years, including a pack of visiting Boy Scouts from Centralia, along with a scoutmaster, who were unarmed and unharmed, but supposedly scared out of their wits after being charged by one of these furious beasts. It seems that, whatever they are, the ape men of Ape Canyon do not appreciate human trespassers. A very bizarre and much more recent report of an alleged attack happened in 1965 in Monroe County, Michigan, when a 17-year-old Christina Van Aker was driving home one evening with her mother. As they drove, there was a reported loud thud that reverberated through the car and actually shook the vehicle. Thinking that they had hit an animal or possibly a person, they stopped the car to take a look. According to the report, as soon as Christina rolled the window down, a massive arm covered in black hair had then reached through the window, grabbed her head, and then smashed it against the car door so hard she was rendered completely unconscious. It is unclear how much it had been prepared to push this attack, as Christina's mother's screams seemed to have startled it and sent it running off into the woods. The mother would claim that it was a hair-covered ape-like beast around 7 feet tall, which growled like a mad dog. Still more recent yet is a somewhat well-known case that happened in the year of 2000 in a very rural part of Honobia, Oklahoma. The witness, known only as Mike, supposedly bought a farm there with his family, and several months after moving in, very strange things began to happen. One evening, Mike claims that they started to hear loud bangs on the front door, and even on the sides of the house. And in the ensuing days, he claimed that he had seen a shadowy figure that stood at least 8 feet tall, just lurking about his property. After this, things got more harrowing, when 30 chickens went missing from the chicken coop, and a load of deer meat was stolen from the shed, which had had the door completely ripped off. In addition to this, on several occasions, there were heard unearthly and deafening shrieking wails booming out of the forest at night. Mike asked his brother Tim for help, and the two men decided that they would try a stakeout and maybe shoot the intruder with rifles. After several nights of staying awake in the dark with their rifles held close, a man-like hairy face reportedly bloomed out of the darkness at the window to peer in and growl menacingly, after which the two brothers fired at it, sending it fleeing. As the two men ran out onto the porch to pursue it, they saw it fall to the ground, apparently dead, and 3 more of the massive beasts allegedly then materialized from the trees to carry away the carcass. The next evening, they apparently came back for revenge, as the brothers reported having their home assaulted by the creatures. They hurled stones, punched walls, violently rattled doors and windows, all while howling in anger. And such attacks would persist until the family decided to move away. The incident had been commonly called the Siege of Honobia, and has several of the hallmarks of Beck's Ape Canyon encounter, such as the dead Bigfoot inciting fierce vengeance and the attack on a home by several of the creatures who seemed to have really wanted to get in. One wonders what would have happened had they actually succeeded.